Brother gonna rise with the sun. Step two, get some good, some food in you. Step three, you grow hard about what you wanna be. Step four, everybody just do your thing.
Many areas still seems to be suffering from virus. It is difficult to say that the pandemic is over. It means that it may be socially over before it is medically over. People are trying to the various restrictions declare that the pandemic is over, even if the virus is still simmering, even if no vaccine or effective treatment has been developed. I think there is a social psychological problem like extreme fatigue and frustration. People are saying enough is enough. It's time to get back to normal. It's already happening. In several US states, governors have relaxed ease restrictions and allowed hair and nail salons, gyms, other business to reopen. Even the public health officials have warned that it is premature. As a lockdown devastates the economic situation, even more people may say, I'm sick of it. If you disagree with the notion that it's over, what part of it do you disagree with? If you say it's not over yet, what is your argument? The difficulty is that we cannot declare victory once and for all. Defining the end of the pandemic is a long and difficult process. When people say, when will it end? They are referring to the social end. It does not mean that the end will come by suppressing the disease, but that the pandemic will also end, and when people get tired of the panic and start living with the disease. Many believe that the so-called end will not be determined by medical data, but by socio-political process. The end of infectious disease is very chaotic. Even in past cases, the reason for the end of an epidemic cannot be clearly explained. It is difficult to see for whom the end of the epidemic is for, and who can declare the end. If we do not try to fight fear and ignorance aggressively and carefully, fear could severely harm those who are vulnerable. Even in places where not a single infected person was found, such situation can occur. And the spread of fear can be even worse when it is compounded by issues of race, crisis, and languages. The influenza of 1918, commonly referred to as the Spanish flu, is still cited today as an example of the great damage caused by pandemics and effectiveness of isolation and social distance. This flu killed between 50 and 100 million people worldwide. The young and middle-aged were the most frequent victims. Children lost parents, families lost breadwinners, and soldiers were lost in the midst of World War One. After sweeping the world, the flu slowly faded away, replaced by a weaker flu that appears annually. This flu may have been like a fire and burned itself out, consuming anything that could be burned or trees that were nearby. It ended socially as well. After the end of World War One, people were conscious of a fresh start and a new era, trying to forget the nightmare of disease and war. Until recently, influenza of 1918 was largely forgotten, but other influenza pandemics followed. The 1968 Hong Kong flu killed 1 million people worldwide, with 100,000 deaths in the US states, most of them over the age of 65. The Hong Kong flu virus is still causing seasonal flu outbreaks today. In West Africa, more than 11,000 people have died of Ebola. Ebola is a highly contagious and deadly disease with a frighteningly high mortality rate. The epidemic was dying down, and there were no confirmed cases in Ireland, but the fear was palpable. In the streets and in the hospitals, everyone is anxious, said Mary's a recent issue of other passengers on buses and trains looked at them suspiciously simply because of the color of their skin. If you coughed even once, people moved away from you, as a fear lingered in Ireland, and the World Health Organization (WHO) declared that Ebola epidemics was over. Several plague epidemics over the past 2,000 years, killing millions, have changed the course of history. Each plague's epidemics amplified the horror. Plague is also known as a Black Death. The plague is caused by infection with a plague's bacillus, which is carried by fleas, parasites, rats. However, the disease cannot be eradicated simply by exterminating the rats, since it can be spread to other people through the droplets of infected people. Although the pandemic ended at that time, plague outbreaks were repeated. The most significant of these was an epidemic that begins in China in 1855 and spread throughout the world, killing more than 12 million people in India alone. Health officials in Mumbai went so far as to burn entire regions to the ground and attempt to eradicate the plague. No one knows for sure if that had any effect. Some say it weakens the bacteria, or perhaps human action, such as burning down villages, had an effect. However, the plague has not disappeared completely. It is not clear how the plague ended. Some scholars believe that the cold waves killed off the fleas that carried the disease, but droplet transmissions would still have remained a route of transmission.